Hello, hello, hello. Hope you can hear me. Hope you can hear me. Hey, everybody. Hi, how are you doing? I'm here with Joanna Smith. Oh, I have my phone on, and I was just making sure that I'm on, and I'm seeing a couple of people start to join. I have Joanna Smith. She's here. She's a geotechnical engineer, and she also is an entrepreneur in STEM. And I'm just excited to have her here. Just want to do a few very important homework assignments. Which the first is, of course, you have to check out Phenomenal STEMist. It is in Amazon now. Please feel free to get that book. Very, very important book. And of course, please, please, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. I know Joanna is subscribed, right?
Yes, 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 yes.
All right,
Amazing work.
all right, all right. So it's just very important that you subscribe to my channel. And of course, if you want to place your kids in any type of STEM engagements, do me a favor and check out my website, www.phenomenalstemist.com. And that's where you'll find Phenomenal STEM year, prep, or even summer camp. So excited that you are here, Madam Smith. It's exciting, and I see a couple of people. Bishop Elijah is here. Do you know this person, Bishop Elijah? I don't know, but he is here. He is here to give support. Thanks so much for joining. All right. Well, we're gonna get right into it. I'm not gonna give you a formal introduction. Basically, through the experiences that we talk about, or through this interview, you'll be able to share your background with the audience. And as usual, I ask every STEMist, phenomenal STEMist, 5 questions. So the first thing I want to know is just tell me a little bit about your background, your education, where you went to school, and how when you fell in love with your discipline.
Sure. So my background is from an HBCU starting out. I
Woo-hoo.
actually went to I went to OVU prep as like my, elementary education. I went to a predominantly black elementary school after that. Or I guess you call it middle school. That was the Garvey Heritage School out here in the Bronx with June O'Connor. And that was actually really helpful because that was a space where I was able to receive one on one tutoring and training in mathematics with Miss Bailey. And then I went on to the Harvey School, which is out in Katona, New York, and not necessarily oriented in STEM, but that's actually where I fell in love with STEM and recognized my passion for it. But I'll talk a little bit about that in a little bit. And then I went to the Morgan State University, one of the biggest researching spaces for engineering right now in Maryland. And then I also went to the PWI, Johns Hopkins University, which was like my dream school. I mean, I loved Morgan. It was amazing. Hopkins was a dream school for me because it's Hopkins. I always felt like, wow, like everybody goes there. It was like so brilliant. So I was really happy to be a part of that, and I was really happy to be a part of Morgan. I fell in love with geotechnical engineering actually in the 8th grade. So I remember my father picking me up from Harvey, and I remember seeing an incision in the road. I didn't know what it was, but I know I saw something green sticking out, and I went online immediately and typed in men working on the road because that's what I saw. And when I typed that in, civil engineering popped up, and I knew immediately. I was like, "That's what I'm going to be." And I got, into the high school scholars program and all these stuff. And we went over to California, took a tour of what school was it? Stanford University, 22 libraries, all the different spaces. And they also, went down the list of engineering, mechanical, civil, structural, aerospace, like whatever it was. And I'm just like, yeah, I know I'm going to be civil. So the beautiful part about that is that my grandfather actually was a builder in Jamaica, and he used to build houses from scratch. So at that time, we didn't have people doing like flooring or partitioning different types of engineering. They would do everything. So it was just really exciting recognizing that this was in my bloodline,
Mm.
and being a female didn't mean that I did not inherit that. And so, a lot of my family members as well are roofers and masons and things of the sort, and still do build houses, and architects, and all that great stuff. But it was just beautiful to be a part of that, at an eighth grade level, knowing this is what I'm going to do.
What you're saying is so powerful already. Like, you saw something, I mean, something as simple as men working on the road, and something it feels like inherently told you that that's something that comes from my background. I know it's a man and I'm a woman, but it's something through my bloodline. I didn't know my grandfather was a builder at the first. I didn't know that there were masons. But it doesn't matter. Something in my spirit said, I will become that. And I'm glad your family empowered you to do that versus said, no, that's not for you. The second thing that's powerful is there are a lot of men that work on the road, and they are construction workers, they are not necessarily engineers, right? And what's powerful to me is, I see this in many facets. No knocking construction workers and masons and builders like our grandfathers, or like my granduncle was a builder. What I don't like to see is when the nation pigeonholes people of color to certain types of career fields, right? It's like, well, you could do construction work, or like they told Malcolm X, I know you want to be a lawyer, but you can be a carpenter. There is nothing wrong with carpenters, right? There's nothing wrong with carpenters, but just because someone is even, he said, you're good with your hands, doesn't it necessarily mean you could have to be a carpenter. You can be a civil engineer. So I thought that was powerful. Um, Bishop says, "Have you a bit of knowledge of technical plumbing too?" Like, I don't know, but
Really interesting. Well, I can quickly answer that. So,
mhm.
I actually did a few internships. I did one in Wiesbaden, Germany, with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, and that was more civil engineering based. Ryan Sharp was on here. We actually did a internship with we actually did, I would call it like a mission trip out in Mexico when I was in high school, and we did the second foundation design of a building for a church building, and that was awesome because it was geotechnical engineering, and I didn't even recognize it. And then when we did all of those things, I recognized as well as I worked as a superintendent as well for about 4 or 5 months, and all of that included me looking over MEP so that the
What's an MEP? Hold on, what's an MEP?
MEP, mechanical, electrical, and plumbing drawings. And so when you're a superintendent, you have to oversee everything that's going on the site, how much manpower is coming in, when the concrete is going to be poured, how thick it should be, the column reconstruction for design. So you're doing everything. So yes, Bishop Elijah, I do have some inkling, and my brother-in-law is actually a plumber too. Really great one at that. So just some inkling as well to plumbing. Yes, in engineering, especially civil, you're talking about the the breakdown of civil engineering is really civilization engineering. So you're talking about designing a civilization, right? The infrastructure of something. So you need to know a little bit of everything. So yes, Bishop, I hope that answered your question. At
Speaking
least
of
a little bit.
plumbers, shout out to plumbers. I need one. Like,
Hey,
my toilet is, and it's not, and plumbers do things from simple as messing with my toilet to doing whole buildings, right? So, but seriously, like, my one of my toilets are running, and I'm like, Lord, I need to find somebody to fix this thing. Now I can try to fix it myself, but what's the point, right?
right, right.
So shout out to all those who work in different fields. But it's amazing. Those are heavily male, you
Dominated.
know,
Yep.
dominated fields. Everything, even to the point where you were a superintendent. And
Oh
like,
yeah.
I want to know your experience before I even move on. But hold on, we'll talk about that a little later. Like, managing men, right? Like you as a young, I mean, you're young. You look younger than me. That is a powerful thing. So you fell in, but ultimately, the first question is that you fell in love with your discipline just by observing and knowing who you were and whose you were, knowing your family that dynamic. I thought that was amazing. Shout out to everybody who has joined: Ryan, Anthony, Sherwin, Bishop. Good to see you all. My mother's here. We got a good audience out here. We already started asking
Hey.
questions. All right, here's my second question. What tools did you use to discipline yourself? So tell me a little bit more about your educational background. So you told me a little bit about where you went to school, but what were your degrees?
My degree was in civil engineering and also in geotechnical engineering. In terms of discipline, I would say that really came from a younger age. So I know there are some of us on this line that may know what Pathfinders is. That was a major space of discipline for me, from drum corps to drilling and marching to making sure your books were on time to remembering all your memory verses at a specific time. All of those things were very important and integral to me being disciplined about my craft and what needed to be done at a certain time. So I would say, and for those that don't know what Pathfinders is, it's almost like it's more of a religious based version of like Girl Scouts or Boy Scouts. So, understanding how to eat off the land, understanding timing. I remember one major thing for us was every time we used to go to camp as a club, um, our director at the time, who was Walter Harris, he would always tell us that we could not go on the line with anything that was not dress code worthy. So no bonnets, no headscarves, no pajamas. Like all of these things were things that we saw other clubs doing. But at 6 o'clock in the morning, when you needed to be on that line, you had better make sure that you
Oh
woke up
yes.
enough time to wash your face, brush your teeth, put on your jeans pants, and have on your t-shirt that had your club name on it. And those stuff, those aspects of just discipline have taken me so far in terms of getting what needs to get done, in a certain amount of time.
That is Omari saying powerful story of a through pathfinding. I was also a pathfinder. I went all the way up to 17 years old right before I went to college, and from 10 years old, and that was one of the major experience. I was in the drum corps. I was in the color guard. I wasn't in the drill team, but I was a counselor. Like Pathfinders was a excellent community of young people that led to leadership. It really, really, really trains young leaders. And so you learn discipline, it seems, through a village mindset. The church in your
Yep,
experience, right?
yep,
What
yep.
a good church, which had leadership that basically trained new leaders through making sure you had things done on time. You weren't lackadaisical. That's
No,
what I'm hearing. I had to if I had to be here online at 5, I had to wake up an hour early to make sure that I am properly prepared. It's because you're saying you have a degree, a bachelor's degree and a master's degree, or just a bachelor's degree?
bachelor's and masters. Bachelor's
Bachelor's,
from Morgan, masters from Hopkins. Yep,
right. So you have a bachelor's degree in civil engineering and a master's degree in
geotech.
geotechnical engineering from Johns Hopkins University, which is a like really really
Yeah,
great.
yeah. The name was there. It was like that.
Right, and so that means you had to be really, really prepared academically to really do well. Um, Tell me really what your challenges were in school. What were some of your challenges?
I would say I'm thinking about subject wise. One subject that was intense for me was statics and dynamics. That is, the movement or non-movement of so statics is like the actual structure, it being static, not moving, but understanding the forces that are working on it upon its not non-movement. And then dynamics is understanding the forces of an object in motion. So that might be wind forces, rain, water, different types of loads or forces on the object. That subject was intense because they actually did it like a dual. Usually, schools do one subject, like statics for one semester and dynamics They did not do that at Morgan, and boy, have mercy. Uh, it was challenging, but I was very grateful. Community is always helpful, and so we had, all our friends that were in civil engineering working through this as well. And so we got a good grip on statics and dynamics. So that to me was one of the most challenging experiences. I would also say going to Hopkins was also a challenge. I didn't necessarily find as much support as I did in the HBCU community, and so I had to recognize my strengths, and then also reconstruct myself mentally, um, to work through that. I did
Mm.
lean on my Morgan State community though, just for emotional support. So I think it's very important to understand the support that you need when something might be challenging. You might not need the academic support, but you need somebody saying, "Hey, you got this. It's okay. Do you need to come by? Do you need to have lunch? Do you need to talk?" And things of that sort. And I think sometimes, that people can get lost in the sauce on that part, but those were two challenges for me. I might have said three, while going through the civil engineering journey.
See, what you're saying is so powerful because Um, and this is for the PWIs. What does PWI mean, and what does HBCU mean? HBCU stands for Historically Black Colleges and Universities. So Joanna went to a school that predominantly was African American in the student base, as well as administration, as well as faculty. Right. So it was extremely supportive for people like her. And then she moved from her bachelor's degree to a university that was a predominantly white institution. That's what PWI means. And what she's saying, and many people say this, is that students of color who are brilliant, you can hear she is brilliant, right? Many of them get lost at PWIs not because they can't handle it academically, but because they do not have support. This is for the PWIs. There have to be some mechanisms. She shouldn't have had to go back to her other institution to get that support. She shouldn't have had to. She should have had it at the PWI. And so it's very, very important because there are some PWIs where there is no HBCU in the neighborhood, right? She was in Maryland for Johns Hopkins as well as Morgan State. So she was able to do that. But what if she goes to a PWI in Idaho? Right? Like there is no HBCU. Just to let you know, HBCUs are in mostly states of the South. If you think about it, in this country during segregation, these institutions were built for former slaves in the South. So there are not a lot of HBCUs in the West and the North. Okay? Therefore, PWIs in the West and in the North have to create emotional spaces for brilliant people of color and not just put it as they can't hack it. So that was a powerful statement that you made, and I had to go home. I went to a PWI in New York, where I'm from. So I was always, after the week was over, traveling to Queens, where I got a good meal from my mother and a good church experience from my church family. And if you're going to go to a PWI, I suggest you do the same. You either go to a place where there is a strong network of African Americans, or you go home. That's just that's what I see that has been working. But I want to talk to you a little bit more about your challenges in school in terms of the academic part, where it's like hardcore work. Please tell me what a civil engineer is, and then how does it differ from a geotechnical engineer?
Sure. So civil engineering is kind of the overarching space of infrastructure. So as a civil engineer, your curriculum is going to include structural engineering. It's going to include some physics and design to understand how forces work. It's going to include mechanics of materials, so the mechanics of how a material works or a certain thing might work, because we always want to understand what the forces are and what they look like. when we design in civil engineering, we're always designing for the capacity of something, and we're looking at the factor of safety, like whatever that capacity is. We're going to design it 2 or 3 times that in order to make sure that the integrity of of the structure is fulfilled, right?
When you say it though, like you're talking about a building? What's that it?
It can be any type of infrastructure. So it can be a building, it can be a bridge, it can be the foundation of an onshore, like an offshore structure, which is the water. So I've also worked on structures like that where we have to design a pile foundation. If you don't know what piles are, they're like those steel beams that you see. Sometimes they can be circular, they can be well, they're usually circular. If you're looking at beams, and we're talking about that I-beam structure. However, the pile foundation design is so to ensure that the building or the structure onshore or offshore is stable. So that goes a little bit more into the geotechnical part. But civil engineering, you're doing infrastructure, you're looking at different types of ways to ensure that the forces of a structure is sound. And then also in your civil engineering curriculum, you're going to do like some electrical engineering. So a little bit of everything, really. Geotechnical engineering is a
Hold on one
subset
second
of,
before you talk about geotechnical engineering. So, like, I had a structural engineer on here, or
okay.
so what's the difference between a structural engineer? Because what you sound like you're saying is what he was saying that he does, but you're not doing the same thing. So what's the difference between a structural engineer and a civil engineer?
So a structural engineer is more a subset of civil. So um, I would say so civil is like the overarching. So people I would say okay, so there are specifics in civil engineering, okay?
Okay.
So yes, I'm a civil engineer, but I might do more in water and environment type of programs, or that's my design focus area. I'm a civil engineer, but I'm a structural engineer, so I deal more with the physics of the building and the foundation. Some structural engineers do that as well, or the design of the actual building. The structural engineers work very closely with the architects. Okay.
Right.
So I want to make this big skyscraper. Structural engineer says, okay, how many floors? How much is the capacity, dead load, live load? That's like, whether people, you got desk and chair, they're like dead load and live load, like people walking around and things of that sort. So that's a structural engineer. An environmental engineer will deal more with like wastewater and treatment facilities, making sure that there is a certain limit to so much parts per million of whatever this chemical might be in your water, or clarifiers, and when we talk about that, we're talking about the cleanliness or water treatment plants and stuff like that. Or so there are different subsets of civil engineers. Okay, is
Got
that
it.
a little bit more clear?
Yeah, very clear, very clear. Thank you. So now tell me, so you are a subset. You are your degree, geotechnical engineering, is a subset of civil, just like structural is kind of like a subset of civil. Okay, so tell me about. Yes, ma, it's a subspecialty. That's what I realized. Now I get it because I have all these engineers coming on, and that's why there's so like I've had a structural engineer, I have an electrical engineer, I've had a mechanical engineer, I've had a civil engineer, I have a geotechnical
Geotechnical,
engineer,
yep.
I've had a software engineer. Like there's so many types of engineers. So when
Hmm.
you say I want to be an engineer, young man or young woman,
Which
you have
one?
to you which one? Which one? All right, so tell me about yours.
Yeah, geotechnical. So I felt like geotechnical was most important for me because I like working with my hands. Some people don't like that. Structural engineers usually don't get out in the field as much. Some of them do, but usually they're just kind of pumping calculations behind a desk, and then they give it, and then sometimes they go out in the field. They're like, oh, this isn't going to work. So the geotechnical engineer designs for the subsurface aspect of a foundation. So when I say subsurface, sub is anything below, right? To submerge, submarine, whichever, below the ground or below water. I guess if it's submarine in that case, but sub means below. And so when we do a subsurface investigation, so I was the lead engineer for the Hunts Point program project, which is a $1.8 billion project for New York City. And if you don't know anything about Hunts Point, it's very vital. It is the heartbeat to New York for food and produce. Food comes to Hunts Point, to the Hunts Point area, sometimes at like 1, 2, 3 o'clock. By 7 o'clock in the morning, the Hunts Point area is dead. It is alive at from 12 to about 5 or 3 o'clock in the morning. And food comes in from like Alaska. You get the what is it? The salmon, all these other different spaces. So the East River is adjacent to Hunts Point. The rail for CSX and Amtrak is adjacent to Hunts Point, and then you have the transportation that comes in. So all of those different areas were something that was very important and vital because the subsurface investigation design had to be done. So I go out there. We call this call is called borings. And so borings are basically you get the drill machine and the rig. You have to classify the type of soil that you have, and then those the soil that you classify has to meet certain criteria based on whatever program or project you're working for. So I was working with, I think it was Transit. They have their own guidelines, like how you
Mhm.
have an industrial design code or building code, depending on where you are in the world, things like that. So, if the soil is a certain class or it's too soft or it doesn't have enough um, different types of soil or rock or whichever in there, or say sometimes you got to hit bedrock. I was just talking to one of my friends. I'm actually here at the Museum of Natural History in New York,
Mhm.
and so
Mhm.
we're out here looking at all the different type of quartz and schist and all these type of things. But all of those things are important to understand what is underneath. What's underneath the ground? What's underneath the ground is how we know what we need to design, how
To
deep
make
our
it
piles need to
stand.
go,
Yeah.
how wide they need to be in terms of diameter or length and width, the height. So the thing about Hunts Point was that it was a very challenging space to be in. Um, there were spaces where you'd hit bedrock at 5 feet, and there were spaces you'd hit bedrock at 150 feet because it's on the Cameroon fault line. So anytime you're in a fault line, you're in a space usually that either had water there before or water was there and it's not there anymore. So different spaces have different pockets, and then things get eroded on a fault line. And so that's why you have kind of like that jagged edge of here, soil is here, it's soft here, bedrock is here, it's not here. And then imagine your contractor now, whatever I put in my report and whatever calculations I have from soil testing or from whatever I've come up with, that's what my contractors are going to use. The really
Mhm.
big deal, like the
Yeah.
unseen, making sure and ensuring the seen. And so, as a black woman, as a native of the Bronx, this was really dear to my heart. I mean, I'm not from the South Bronx, but it's the Bronx. It's the Bronx. It's the Bronx. It was just powerful to be a part on that. So that was just a little bit about geotechnical engineering and
What you're saying
um,
what you're saying is so powerful in that, you know, y- I answered this a couple of weeks ago about a building. The most important part of the building, in my opinion, is the foundation, right? Like how, like making a solid foundation. Because if you have a weak foundation, the structure will crumble. And what I'm hearing from you is you are very integral in the foundation, meaning not even just the foundation of the building, but the land in which the building or whatever, in these cases transport areas, will sit, right? Imagine someone who built the subway. Before there was a subway, there had to be geotechnical engineers down there making sure, like, can a train really go through here? Is it solid enough? Is it bedrock enough for something to exist down here for on a permanent, on a long term basis? What you're saying is so it's a powerful job. It like
yeah,
it's like we take for granted when we walk in the streets and we walk around and we go underground, and we go on to piers when we go visit the beach. there was an engineer that had to survey the sand to see if can I build this pier, you know?
Mhm.
Wow, wow, wow. So, tell me a little bit about what you do now and what you did back then and what were the challenges? What were the challenges in dealing with all these men? I know there were some challenges.
Oh, well, you know what's so funny? I find it always interesting that I usually get asked that question, but the men treated me like a queen. I had
Really?
no issues with them in any jobs. Maybe one job where somebody was but I was convinced that this man was not 100% upstairs. So,
Okay.
that was the only thing. But no, I mean, we get on there. The guys are out here to work. Like they're not out here playing any games. They're very hard workers. I never have any issues. Usually, I say, hey, we're gonna do this. We're gonna do that. They'll say, hey, what do you think about this? And I'm like, sure. I think sometimes what happens in engineering is that um, there is a disconnect sometimes with the people that you're working alongside, because some people are like, oh well, they are subcontractors or whichever. But my thing is always giving respect,
Respect.
regardless, because these folks have been in the business longer than you, or maybe just as long as you, and just because they don't have a degree, or maybe they do, some of them do, but that doesn't mean that they don't know what they're doing, and that doesn't mean that you should operate from this egotistical space in anything, period, right? And so I've never had an issue. I remember when I was actually working as an assistant superintendent in college without a complete. I was maybe sophomore or junior when I was working in construction out in DC. I remember it's called the Union, the first. I'm drawing a blank now, but the building that we did was a Tremel Crow office space building. It was right next to Union Station, so, and when I worked on that job, everybody thought that I like worked there. I was an intern, so
Mm.
this was the level of respect I had, going into these jobs and positions. I never had any issues. Even, I remember I worked on the New Jersey Turnpike doing the different signs structures there. So I did all the design for that, moment analysis, all that stuff, using different programs. And I always wanted to be a girl working out, or woman rather, working on the road and the nighttime as well.
What?
And so when they called me out there, yeah, like my shift started at 9 o'clock. I think we got off around like 3 or something. And that was amazing. And I'm like, man, I done did this. Like I said I was gonna do this and I did it. And the guys they were so kind. We got in, we got out. Everybody wants to go home, and I've never really I can't say I've had any issues or complaints, especially being in the field. No, I feel at home. I feel like a sister, really, a big sister, if you will. I don't even, maybe that's not the right, because I'm old enough to be some of these people's daughters, but
Mhm.
it's always just a lovely experience, working alongside them.
Okay. So that's something quite great to hear. That's
Yeah,
awesome. So if you are a female and want to be an engineer, don't let the fact that you're female scare you. You may not have the problems that you think you will have, right?
right.
My mom asked the question. She said, could the same apply to subsurface conditions, which may produce sinkholes in Florida? Are you what you were saying about the certain soils are different? Like, are you the people they call when there's sinkholes? Like, are geotechnical engineers the people?
Yes, yes, it is. So, different engineers. So I don't want to say there are subsets in civil engineering and geotech, but
Mhm.
everybody has their strong point, and usually in civil engineering, when you talk about sinkholes, you were going to be talking about like jet grouting, understanding how much concrete, how much grout you need to fill, what the psi of that needs to be in a certain space to ensure that you are filling that sinkhole to its maximum capacity. So yes, you would call geotechnical engineers, and most likely those geotechnical engineers would either hire subcontractors or be able to tell you the volume or capacity, or maybe not. Sometimes these sinkholes are a whole nother ordeal, because then you're dealing with different type of soils, and yeah. So yes, you would call us, and there would be also specific geotechnical engineers that would deal with that.
Okay, so what do you do now, and what are your challenges?
So right now, I am a STEM. founder. My business is exposing 500,000 students to STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math through roller skating, through music, and also through negotiation. So our approach is more of a cultural and emotional approach to engineering to ensure that minorities or students of color are also included in engineering leadership. And so when we talk about physics, we're talking about roller skating because there is design. The students actually do mechanics. They take the skates apart, they put it back together, they understand the friction, the coefficient, how that works, and why that makes sense. And then they also learn the motion. So I'm also certified to teach roller skating. So I do that. So I always try to make things fun so that it becomes a lifestyle versus something that's abstract and may seem difficult.
Love it, love it, love it. So you're doing something like me, like you
Yes, yes,
phenomenal STEMist, but you're doing it from with a more active. And that sounds like that sounds like who you are.
yes,
You like to do things. You like to work with your hands, and you
yes,
like to get. Now you're wanting more kids to be engineers like you and get them excited about STEM with something that they normally know about, connecting physics to roller skating. That's an amazing or any type of ordeal. So what's your favorite part about what you do? What's your favorite part of being a geotechnical engineer? I think you told me a lot about that already, but and, wh-
yeah.
and why are you so excited about this new venture that you're doing?
I'm excited about this new venture because it's going to create other leaders of color that are able to um, excel in engineering, not only in the future but now. So they start doing it now. We're creating a pipeline, between the corporate spaces and entrepreneurial spaces for students to get into. This summer, we're actually going to be doing a STEM camp at Manhattan College, and so we're making sure that students ages 4 to 15 are actually on a university campus and they understand and feel that presence and what it looks like. And they're a part of the mechanical and, the engineering and also the negotiation factors. A lot of times when folks come in to corporate or entrepreneurship, they actually usually don't understand their value and they're charging below. And so what we do with these 4-year olds and these 13-year olds and 15-year olds is allow them to understand their capacity and their value, what they bring to the table, whether if they're washing dishes or they know how to talk to people nicely or they want to, you know, be an engineer when they're older. What does that look like? What do taxes look like? How much you going to make? What does inflation look like? Or how much, I mean, we don't use those specific terms all the time,
Mhm.
but my students from last year understood that, hey, 40% of my paycheck or 30% is going to be taxes. So how much do I want to make a year? I'm 7 years old. I want to make maybe 300,000, 400,000. The next 10 years, what is that going to look like? And so we have those conversations so that at the age of 30, they're not thinking about like me starting their own company, but they'll start it by the age of, 9 and 10. One of my students actually is on his second book and he was 10 years old and he produced the first one. So,
Wow.
those are the type of things we're looking forward to.
Yeah, you're trying to transform a
Oh
generation.
yeah, this has to be a regular thought process. Shouldn't be something foreign or like, oh my goodness, you did that, but something like, okay, that's what we're expecting.
Awesome, awesome. I'm with you. I think that this is an awesome venture. If there's any young person or parent in New York, you need to check out Joanna Smith, her website. Do you have a website? I don't think you have a
Yes, the
website.
website is Daily DALEY Smith STEM. Daily Smith
D
STEM DALEY SMITH.
Y
Um,
Smith.
sorry, inc.com. I'm thinking about the other. So Daily DALEY Smith SMITH
Mhm.
INC.com.
That's right. There it is. So, guys, check out that website. Check out that website, especially if you are in the New York area. She is looking to transform 500,000, you said?
Yeah, 500,000 students in 5 years. Yep.
500,000 students in 5 years. And we are tagging up. Our first tag team is this phenomenal STEMist interview. Please do me a favor and share this. Share this. This is an awesome young lady, brilliant woman of color, and she's trying to pay it back. She's trying to reach back and it not be just her, not just her. And that's what I think our common passion is sometimes we just say, okay, there's one person who is this and everybody else will be this. No, anybody that wants to be what they want to be can be that. Yeah, I lost you. You went sideways. Go back to go turn.
That.
turn.
Uh,
Yeah, I think I lost her. Hey, just in time though. Just in time. The interview was awesome, guys. Thanks so much. Thanks so much for being this afternoon. I am the community chemist, and so is Joanna. So is Joanna Smith. You guys have a good night. Happy Memorial Day.